Hey, this is Julie. I'm back. Yesterday, I got to go to dinner with my mom and my sister, so that sort of took out the day, and I haven't yet figured out quite where to post a notice on the Twitch feed when I am not going to be here. I tried posting one the other day, but it didn't show up to people from the outside, so I'm assuming I did it wrong. Now, we're picking up from where we were yesterday. To remind everybody what this is I am taking step by step through my process of using Audacity to put together an audio drama. Yes, a lot of this is very repetitive. A lot of it is relatively dull and just me clicking around as I explain things for the 700th time. That's why I'm going to talk about other things while I do it as well. In fact, today, one of the things I want to talk about going to be um, is going to be the writing process, because I was talking some last episode about how I've been working on redoing the second half of season 2 of Fatal Girl. Actually, not redoing, sort of rearranging, because I never wrote the final episode exactly. What I did was the I wrote the whole thing, obviously, and but I wrote episodes 1 through 5, and 5 was not really complete, frankly. What I'm going to be doing right now, just to refresh people, I'm going to do some noise removal on this track up here. And this is a character for for, uh, should be episode 1. Is she in episode 1? Yeah. Of season 2. I also, because I recorded at the same time, I also have the same person in the same recording for. Oh, that's my heat coming on. I was like, what is that rumbling noise? Something's happening. No. I also have the same character, the same actress for another role for the for an episode later in the season, but I'm going to clean them both together because they're going to require the same sound background and everything. And this track I haven't yet split, so let's go through that again. I'm going to split stereo to mono because, as you can see, I had two microphones set up. The setup remained the same, and it was easier not to constantly change it back and forth because, frankly, I couldn't remember which mic was the default when I changed it from stereo to mono, especially when I was doing a lot of recording in a short period of time. So I'd have one person do this, and then I'd have two people on two different mics, like the same afternoon or the next day. So I didn't like switching it back and forth, and it's just as easy to go here and go split stereo track to mono. Now this here, you can see there's sound. That's because, of course, the other mic is still in the same room and is picking her up from a distance, but it's going to be a slightly different sound, and so I don't want to mix them. I don't want to mix them because this sound is going to be a little off that one. I mean, it's probably not detectable to the human ear, but it's still better to do it right. And since it's so easy to split the track, like I just did, and then get rid of the blank one. Now, the next thing I have to do is clean the tracks. Now, as I've said before, the first thing I do is a high pass filter, and I'm using 200 as my base. And then I'm going to do the high pass filter here with my repeat key. That's the Q. I'm going to turn off this solo for now and the mute so that I just click the button. And then I'm also going to do it on this track. Now, this I copied. Sorry, my cat just decided to acupuncture my knee. Hello, bunny. So, I love you, but don't surprise me, sweetheart. So, I've taken this because there was a lot of little blank spaces in here from the middle of the top track, but of course I've got to cut out all of the big noises. Then I'm going to duplicate it, and now I'm going to find myself a noise removal sample. As I've done before, I'm just going to go through this again. I'm going to beat it into everybody's head because this is how I do it. I mean, I'm sure there are other ways, and I'm sure there's people who know more than me, but this way works for me It's repetitive, but it's simple, and it actually goes pretty quickly once you get used to it. What I've done is I better describe what I'm doing if I'm trying to beat it into your head. I had I have two copies of the track. I volumed up the upper copy here. I could label them if I was concerned. I do this enough that I'm not worried because I know what I'm doing. But anytime you need to, you could always just say sample, and if you can type and spell at the same time, or you can say, final. And that way you can keep track of which one's which. I mean, after a certain point, it's really, really obvious. But let's say I want to take out, the chances are I'm just going to use this bit right here, but I want to see how everything else volumes up. Because the point is to get down to as clean a sound as possible. That's not too bad. Now I'm going to stretch it so that I can see it across the whole screen. And obviously I'm going to take out this bit. And I'm going to take, I'm going to take this whole, I'm going to take that whole part out. Because what I'm aiming for is 5 clean seconds. So I can still get 5 clean seconds out of this, probably. Now, right now it's a little too scraggly to see, so I'm going to hit it with the high pass filter again and tighten it up. Remember, everything you do in the sample track does not affect the final track except the cutting across. You're basically just using it as a sample to find where the peaks are so you can cut the peaks out of the final track. And so, actually, I'm just going to cut this whole part because it's too scraggly. And I'm going to take this little bit here. What matters the most is this pale blue in the middle. These points are nowhere near as important as points coming off of this middle part. So I'm going to go with that. Now, it's too small for 5 seconds, of course, but I can copy it and paste it and make it 6 seconds long because it's a 3-second track. And the computer can't tell. It just needs 5 seconds to read your exemplar before you use it to clean your tracks. So, if I really wanted to make it clean, what I'm going to do is I would take, I'd delete all of that, and I'd just go with this, even, go with 1 clean second, which I might as well do. So, might as well be good. And then I have to paste that several times to make sure I get 5 seconds. I would always err longer than shorter. If you're under 5 seconds, some people say it's 10 seconds, but it registers just fine with 5 as far as I've ever seen. So I'm going to get the noise profile from that track. Then I'm going to hit noise removal again. Now, again, I'm using shortcut keys because I set them all up in a previous episode. My shortcut is Control-Alt-N for noise reduction. Easy to remember. Don't click this button again. You click the OK. And then it runs noise reduction on this track. So what it's doing is it's looking for all the noises that are in here and taking them out of here. And they are very, very little coming out of the underbelly of your track to get background noise out. And then we do it again here. I'm using Q, which is my repeat key. The repeat key is the default is Control-R. I like having repeat on a single stroke key. And frankly, R gets in my way. I like Q. Q is like way off to the side. I don't have to worry about hitting it by a mistake. So now I'm going to fit the whole thing in the window again. And I'm going to leave this just in case, because I don't want to have to go and get this sample again if I don't have to. It's easiest just to keep it around. It's, a couple of tiny little bits of memory. But I am going to put a label track on this. That's Control-B. A label track will always appear under the track you've got highlighted. So if I clicked here, then my label would appear in the one that's already there. But since this one doesn't have one under it, it created one. And I'm going to note all cleaned high pass and noise. Just so that when I come back, I'm like, oh crap, did I clean this file? I can't remember. And then clean it again, and that could be bad. Now the next thing I'm going to do, because a lot of these peek out. Now, I did note earlier on that this here was that here we had some examples of clipping where it had gone outside. Now you'll notice if you were here last time, I'm going to keep saying yesterday even though I skipped a day because it's convenient, but last episode, there was squared off. Now, when you do a high pass filter, it actually does clean some of that because some of that stuff that got squared off would have been removed by a high pass filter anyway. And that allows you to, yes, I'm moving things so the cat can sit next to me. There you go. You can sit up here, sweetheart. The cat's going to be a constant visitor. We'll get used to her. Her name's Bunny. Everybody can say hi. Oh, I forgot to get the chat window out just a second. Just in case. I want to make... Hey, no. Right, this one. Just in case anybody shows up, I want to make sure that I am available because that's one of the things that I think is really awesome about using Twitch is that we have the chance to actually talk to people rather than just doing a static feed or a video or a tutorial or whatever, or even just a blog, because I've done plenty of blogs where I've talked about these same kind of topics. So, I mean, that is the big appeal, is the ability to talk, and also the fact that, frankly, if I have a set time to be here and do this, I will get at least an hour of this done a day. Funny how that works. Ooh. It's a new blanket for you, Bunny. Oh, that's a soft blanket, too. Come here, sweetie. Oh, it's crackling. The blanket's got some static. I can hear crackling in my headphones. Well, she'll show up or she won't. Anyway, so, back to what I was doing. You can see in here that if you... I don't have an example from yesterday. I could go fetch one from another source. Actually, I think I'm going to do that just to be sure because, just because that's the kind of thing that it's, when you see things, it really helps to understand what is different with them. And that's always been my thing. I'm a very visual person. And to that end, here's the previous iteration of this track. Now, looking at this here, I'm just going to copy this chunk and we're going to compare it. And I'll go ahead and close that. And to get it in roughly the same place, I'm going to make a copy of this. That's Control D. And then to paste it in the same place, I'm actually going to Control D here. This is the sneaky way to put something, because otherwise it just pastes at the beginning of the line. I'm going to paste it right here. Now, so it's not quite the same place, but it's close enough so we can see it. Now I'm going to make this bigger to bring it out. Now, what I was talking about is clipping. Now here, right here is a big example of clipping. When we recorded, her voice went outside the edges of the stream. Now, sometimes it will still record, and when you highlight it and you go amplify, it'll have a negative number. That's when you know this went outside the edges and you can pull it down and it'll still be there. If it's not a negative number, if it's 0, then you know it clipped off. Now I'm going to go ahead and say -5. Okay, but you can still see when you bring it down, it's still got these squared off edges because that's where it clipped. That's where there is no sound because it painted outside the lines. And you bring it up and you can see this square hack off. Now, here's exactly the same thing after it's been high pass filtered because it took out some of that it would have took out anyway. And it doesn't mean it's fixed, but it does help a little bit. It's just something visually to understand. It's always best to, if you're recording, to keep an eye on the track if you're not used to it, so that you're not clipping, so that you're not going outside the lines. There are various ways you can adjust the gain, which is the incoming volume, as you go, as you're recording, and usually it depends on what sort of setup you have, but most of the time you'll have a microphone. You might have a preamp. A preamp is like a box connecting the microphone to the computer. It's something that preamplifies the sound and puts it into a digital format so the computer can accept it. Sometimes you'll have a microphone that has that all done internally and which plugs with a USB into the computer. If you have a preamp, there's almost always a gain dial on it. And when you dial it up, the voice comes in louder like this. And when you dial it down, you can control and have it come in lighter or lower. It does affect, to some degree, cleanup, because when you volume up, you're pulling up the room tone as well. I don't find it as big a deal as it might sound, but at the same time, having the actor speak in a normal tone of voice and being able to use what they do because they didn't go too loud is also even more handy. I mean, as I'm gonna say every episode, the better the quality of your incoming track, and of course I interrupt myself, the better the quality of the incoming track, the better you're going to get. You cannot polish a turd. So, I'm going to do some pop removal on this. Pop mute is what it does. Is it set up? It's essentially set up for pops, which are a specific noise that you can make if you have an unguarded mic. But I use it for this, which basically takes all the highest spikes and brings them down. What I have set it for is it's -3, so every spike higher than 3 from the edge will be brought down by 1. And I'll do it 3 times, which will bring everything down from the edge 3 times. So I'm going to say, okay, and it runs and watch them all come down. And then I'm going to repeat, and they all come down, and I'm going to repeat. And now my highest spikes are 3, probably 3 from the edge, but I'm going to run it one more time just in case. There we go. So basically, this just brings them down and makes them more useful. I'm still going to keep an eye on this section because it did clip out. And since we have 2 takes, I'm more likely to use the second take because it didn't clip out. None of this over here clipped out. So it's just anytime you can avoid using damaged sound, you avoid using it. So this track is going to go into episode 2. This one's not because it's not episode 2, episode 1. This one's season 2, episode 1. This one's not because it's for episode 4 of season 1. So it's just going to sit there. So I'm going to save this file and I'm going to copy this track. She goes into scene, so many numbers, scene 27. So I have to go open up scene 27. And, oh wait, I have to get all the way back into here. Oh, having voices all over the place is so much fun. But here's my final, and I'm going to go to scene 27, and I'm going to open it up. It's already been cleaned for Alice, who's in there. But I'm going to now paste Old Lady. Now, the reason I kept both parts of Alice's track when I did this is because we had a group recording session, and there is the potential in this other side track for bloopers. So maybe I'll just listen to this now and we'll see what happens. I mean, obviously it's going to be very quiet, but we should still be able to hear most of it. Hello? What is that? Oh, that's a spike of some kind. Might be a pop. Let me look at that. No, it looks like a click. Oh, no, that's a pop. This is, since I've been talking about here. Oh, no, it's a click. We do finger clicks to indicate so that we could easily tell when a track was being changed to something else or when we were done. That probably means that was when she started over with the same scene. I mean, you might go, well, how come the scene lasted this long the first time and only this long? Well, because we probably stopped and started and did some direction in here. So let's give this a listen.
That shit crazy.
Well,
Yeah, I can. Let's see. He's currently on summer break, so I can bring him in. Name a day. Name a day. I can. It's just like give me three prospective days, I can get you one of them because his wrestling camp is already over. That was the big one.
This is us discussing bringing in an actor, Ray's cousin to Ray's nephew to play him as a child, to play Ken as a child, but unfortunately, it didn't happen because this was years ago when we did this recording.
I'm not going to England.
Not at all.
French Smarties. Oh, okay, cool. I took a moment. Margaret. Wanda. Yeah, okay.
I was wondering, what's this Margaret the bitch who's telling everyone to fucking stuff themselves?
That was Maggie.
Oh, that
Yeah. Wanda. Perfect. Yeah, she'll have fun with that.
she was.
So, okay, now putting this into some context, Beverly had been in a play of Richard III, and one of the other actresses in there I recorded to play the old woman. I am going to go ahead and use this voice, even though I haven't been able to get in touch with her recently, but I may recast the character of Chiako's grandmother, even though I've got this recorded, because she's got to show up again, and if I can't get in touch, I can't record her again. So, I mean, this is one of those weird areas. I'm using voices that I recorded like 5 years ago, and it's, everybody was still excited, but as far as I know, somebody could be moved away or not acting anymore or whatever. There's so many different things, and I'm trying to get in touch with as many people as possible to make sure that they're available for future roles, but I can't use anything if I need future recording if the person is no longer accessible.
Yeah. And then, Wanda. Nothing.
Okay, so all of this is just jib jab, and I'm gonna just delete it now that I've listened through it to see. Actually, not quite that much. I try to keep a buffer of like 5 seconds at the beginning and end of any given track, and that's more than 5 seconds. And at this point, it doesn't look like.
There's an hour left of scoffing.
Terrence, I love Scott.
Realize you will not be able to get shortbread cookies there. Scoffing. Oh,
No. I was thinking big biscoffly.
Just trying to see if there's anything else on this track.
Well then.
No. Okay, so I'm gonna get rid of this track. It's done. It served its purpose. I wanted to see if there were any bloopers, because we do use a lot of bloopers in Fatal Girl. And so now I've cut this down to the minimum here, and I'm probably going to go ahead and take the old woman track and
Can I help you, miss?
start here. I'm going to save the other half of it in case some of this comes in wrong, but because, in case there's a mistake or there's a noise in the background. But I'm going to work solely with the second take because the first take did clip out so much. But I'm just going to pop this down into, just down at the bottom of the screen, hold on to it. And just because I'm a little bit anal about it, I'm trying to narrow it up so it's not taking up the whole screen, so I can make the screen as wide as this. Now, as I was saying, I wanted to talk a little bit about the writing process since I've been in a writing mood recently. And most of what I'm going to be doing at this moment, I'm actually going to go ahead and take Alice's second take too, which I believe started with that click.
Yeah. Nothing.
Okay. And to that end, I also have a script open on another page so that I can, well, theoretically at least. Do I have it open? I should have it open. Let's just do that. Make sure that I'm actually on the right page, as it were. 27. Oh, right. Okay. So yeah, this scene starts with Alice saying nothing, and then the older lady saying, "Can I help you?" And so I can essentially delete all of this from Alice's track because this was our first take and a lot of discussion and stuff, and just put it down here as well, just so that I have it in case there's some sort of mistake in here. The scene is not going to be terribly long ultimately when it's done. You end up with these long tracks and you're like, wow, there's a lot in there. And then you're like, no, there's not. So, I mean, working purely with Alice's, one of the things that I'm going to want to do is blank out a lot of this in-between stuff as I go. And that's, there may be more than just this, but this is the voices otherwise in the room. Now, there might be something...
The shop.
Okay, that's a P. I don't want to take it away. You always got to watch out for those sounds at the ends of words if you do this sort of thing. Because... And here...
Teller's shop.
Is that the same
I
one?
thought this used to be a fortune teller's shop. I thought this used to be a fortune teller's shop.
Okay, so that's actually even a repeated line, and I'm going to...
Okay.
Take that. Leave a little bit more space between and take it out. And so that there's still that P it has to be left. Break out us. Make sure...
Really?
Because when we get in a group, we tend to do queuing, so somebody else will be reading the lines opposite you.
And it never got rebuilt.
I gotta keep that T in there. It is really easy to take the ends off of words, especially the th like teeth or with, or a f like laugh, because they get really small. Okay. And one thing when we record in groups that we try really hard to do is not step on each other's lines. Because if you have two lines that overlap, you can't take them apart. And it makes it really, really hard for editing. So, yeah, there's essentially an Alice track. Oh! I have... What? No, what was the Bing? I thought I had a question. Darn it. I think I must have left Facebook open. Let's just close that up. Bunny, I love you. She keeps sneaking up on me. Silly girl. Anyway, so I've got Alice's track clean. Now it's time to do the old ladies. Now, obviously, she seems to be talking a little bit more in this scene, and so it might take a little bit longer.
Can I help you, miss?
And this is me cueing her with Alice's lines. We were in a separate session, or else we'd have been on the same track. Yeah, the Facebook was my Twitch coach checking to make sure that I'm on, because I can't tell. So, thank you so much, Andrew. And I will get back to it. And let's see if she has...
Hit our shop.
Okay. She doesn't have as good mic technique as Alice does. She's clearly bumping into the mic a little bit, which is what those grunking noises are. And they're harder when they come in the words, of course. But in general, if they're, as long as they're not... I do what? Oh. Oh, maybe I'm not on.
Oh my, yes.
Okay, I am still on mine. So, okay, so as I go, I'm going to make sure I leave that sound pop on the end. We might have the same lines a couple of times. Just because, again, coaching, which is nice because then I know that I'm getting what I want, as opposed to the catch as catch can of...
That ghosts are are nothing to scoff at.
And that you get from a lot of satellite.
Scoff at.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That ghosts are nothing to scoff at.
Yeah, there's something bonking the mic all the time right there. It's kind of frustrating because it's not necessarily something I'm going to hear when recording. I try, but it's unfortunate that it doesn't always work. So, all right. So moving on.
Can I help you, miss?
Oh, and this is another take on the scene. Well, you know what? Let's save that one too.
Nothing to scoff at.
Okay, let's listen to this
Can
one.
I help you, miss? Oh, I don't know how you would have heard about that. That place burnt down 60 years back.
You hear the bongity bonk bonk bongity bonk in the background there, and that's mic noise.
Oh my, yes. I remember it like it was yesterday. My husband, God rest his soul, planted himself right there in the middle of the street with a big bucket of water, determined the fire wouldn't spread to our shop. Oh my, yes. I remember it like it was yesterday.
You know, I like that take better, clearly. There's a lot more energy, so I'm going to go ahead and cut this one out. But once again, I'm going to paste it down here. And I accidentally copied the blank space too. Paste it down here, so in case something is illegible. It's always better to not have to go not have to go through all the directories and excuse me, find your way back to where you stored it, where your backup copies are, if you have a choice. So the scene's getting narrower and narrower, obviously. Now, since I'm down to what's probably the sound I'm going with, I'm going to volume these up a little bit. I know they're very loud when you hear them in the headphones, but, and I'm not sure how I could adjust my voice versus that voice at this time and still make sure everything's legible. That's one of the problems because you got so much variation in sound at this stage of the processing. It makes it really hard to do something where it's evening out, where it's evened out. So, I think I'm just going to hope that everybody can deal with that and work with it. I am going to volume up some of this and this here. Now, one of the advantages to this particular scene is that it is set outdoors. Now, I know that sounds like a weird qualification to give to it. I'm going to up this by 3, and I'm going to up these by 3. And then I'm going to make sure that I bring Alice down however much I need to. Bring this down a little bit with the pop mute. Okay, so it just gets it kind of more even. I mean, voices are going to go up and down. You don't, for talking in character, you don't really want just a smooth volume all the time. People whisper, people talk quieter, people talk loud for emphasis, you know. It's you want to keep that. You don't want to make the whispers too loud and the loud stuff too quiet. But you have to keep it within a certain range or else it doesn't sound good at all. Hello, buddy. So, the next step is to put these voices together. But right now, first off, I am going to save a new copy. I'm going to save as, because I do this a lot, CHN edited. HN, the NCHN version is the one where I've done the high pass of the noise removal. Now this is high pass noise removal and it's now edited. Now I can get rid of these because I know they're in a previous file that I have. That's not what I meant to do. Open. They're in a previous file that I know I have access to, and I can get back to it if I need to. So I'm just going to work with these. Now, one of the things that I'm going to note right here as I do it is, I'm going to high pass it for outdoors. Now, outdoors sound is different than indoor sound, and this scene is set on the street. If you've listened to Fatal Girl, then you remember when Alice was in Auntie Hebby's shop in episode 4, and she comes out and the shop collapses, which is something that happens over and over again. The shop just disappears the minute, it just goes into ruin the minute they leave it. So right now she's outside on the street seeing this collapsed shop and asking a passerby about it. Very simple. So for outdoors, though, if you think about it, when you're outdoors, voices sound a little different. I mean, you hear it on TV, you hear it anytime you're recording, and part of what that is high notes carry better in a large space, while low notes don't. This is one of those reasons, like, they use bagpipes for battle, is because the sound carries forever because it's high. And that's how you can't get away from a bagpipe player. But that's the thing. I mean, even, I think there's studies even that, if you can hear a woman shout or scream a lot farther than a man's voice if it's a low voice, because the low notes just don't carry. So what I'm going to do to simulate that is I'm going to run the high pass filter a little higher. I'm going to take it to 500 and see how that sounds. First off, let's go ahead and listen to this as it is.
Oh my, yes. I remember it like it was yesterday.
Now, she sounds like she's right in our face, But if I run the high pass filter at 500, now...
Oh my, yes. I remember it like it was yesterday.
See, it just takes out those low notes, and it's actually going to handle part of all the gronks that we were getting from the microphone stand. They're going to be minimized. They're not going to be gone, but it's going to take out some of that noise. And then I could also do that with Alice just to make it even. And I always want to listen because it's been a long time and I'm not sure where my...
Still an empty shell. Where could that crazy old woman have gotten to?
And actually, I'm not going to do that completely because I forgot these first couple of lines are a voiceover. They're not her talking outside. So now I'm going to run it on that, but not on this part. So, here I closed my script because I wanted to close the Facebook page and not make it have noises anymore. I'm so clever. Okay, so we're going to, the entire scene, I'll just slap the lines into place and then start editing it a little bit. Okay. Script. Okay. We have a voiceover, and then the old lady comes in. So, personally, I could just move the scene. Just use this cursor version to move this. But I like to have sound filled in. And part of that's because I've been using Audacity since an old version, and something bad happened at some point and snapped them all together, and I had to readjust them, and I didn't like it. And it probably would never happen again, but now it's a habit. And so whatever. It's no big deal. And so I want this line, then that line, then this line. That place burned down 60 years back. I need to clear this out because there's some microphone noise to go away. I'm going to push Alice over, not that far, to here. And then push this line and go that direction. And that's about right. And then... this is the kind of thing you kind of get used to doing, where you can kind of see what you're looking at. You've left spaces between lines, so you kind of know where they go in relation to each other.
Well, someone tried, but 10 years ago,
I did something wrong.
big bucket of water determined the fire wouldn't spread to our shop. Hit our shop. Right there in the middle of the street with a bucket.
Okay, so I have repeated that line. Let's just take the second one. It sounds better.
Oh my, yes. Oh my, yes. I remember it like it was yesterday.
You know, this is one of those...
I remember it like it was yesterday. My husband, God rest his soul, planted himself right there in the middle of the street with a big bucket of water, determined the fire wouldn't spread to our shop.
Okay, in this case, I'm going to actually take...
I remember it like it was yesterday. My husband, God rest his soul...
No. I'm telling the computer to shh. How weird is that? I'm going to use the first couple of lines from that take and then move in the rest of these. Let's see.
It was yesterday. My husband...
Now, I heard a little clip on a little bit of breath coming out, and I want to make it big so I can make sure to take that out. And bring it down.
Oh my, yes. I remember it like it was yesterday. My husband, God rest his soul, planted himself right there in the middle of the street with a big bucket of water, determined the fire wouldn't spread to our shop.
Okay. I'm going to have to go through and take out all the little noises, just like I did with the scene between Alice and Auntie Hebby earlier.
Tried, but
and then this comes in here. And presumably that is just like end of scene. Let's see what Alice says right there at the end.
Well then.
Well then, let's go put that into the bloopers because that's kind of amusing. I put everything in, or did I already do it? Is that it?
That shit, great.
I always have more bloopers. But, you know, sometimes they go together if I use little pieces and things. Okay, so if I listen to this scene... Now, before I listen, I always like to split the people off to opposite parts of the soundscape because it sounds better coming in stereo than it does just with everybody right in the dead center. I mean, for an audio drama. For audio books, that's different. There's a whole different mentality, but here we go.
Nothing. Still an empty shell. Where could that crazy old woman have gotten to?
Can I help you, miss?
I thought this used to be a fortune teller's shop.
Oh, I don't know how you would have heard about that. That place burnt down over 60 years back.
Really?
Oh my, yes. I remember it like it was yesterday. My husband, God rest his soul, planted himself right there in the middle of the street with a big bucket of water, determined the fire wouldn't spread to our shop.
And it never got rebuilt.
Well, someone tried, but 10 years ago, they scoffed at the bad luck, but they learned
Learned what?
that ghosts are nothing to scoff at.
Okay, in general, we got it down. There's one mistake in here. It should have been about 10 years ago rather than but 10 years ago. I'm going to go see how it is on the other tracks so that I can hopefully get the right sound for that. I mean, it's fine. It's not like horrible, but I really would like the right words in there. So I'll go into here.
Well, someone tried, but about 10 years ago.
That sounds better.
About 10 years ago.
And so I'm going to take that and close this back up. See, that's why you make sure you keep those backup lines, even if you're relatively sure you've got the right sound.
But 10 years ago.
I'm going to... I want to blank it out. That's L or Control L for default. I changed my default to straight L. And I'm going to give it a little space before I put the line in. Oh, it was coming in with a little space? Anyway. So,
Someone tried about 10 years ago. They scoffed.
well, the reason it sounds different is because I haven't run the high pass filter on it. And now it goes.
Someone tried about 10 years ago. They scoffed at the bad luck, but they learned.
And I'm going to tighten that up a little bit and make sure it sounds more closer.
Someone tried about 10 years ago.
And I'm going to take the volume up on this a bit. Part of it is just repeating and repeating.
Someone tried about 10 years ago.
So until you have the ear to hear and to go, oh, I need this up by another 3, or I have this up by another 5, you know, just to develop the point where you're comfortable just picking numbers out of a hat and applying them. Now, we'll take it back to here. Now, one thing I'm going to do with her, which is the same thing I did with Auntie Hebby, is I'm going to tempo her up a little bit. You'll find that a lot of people, when they're first on mic with a script, especially people from theater, they try to speak clearly and they try to project a bit, and they tend to be a little slower. And it doesn't mean they're wrong, because they're theater trained. It's what they're used to. But it doesn't sound right on the mic. Mic is more like, the microphone is more like a movie. You want things to sound really natural. And so a lot of times all you need to do is tempo them up a little bit to take out that slow note.
You, miss?
I thought this used to be a fortune teller's shop.
Oh, I don't know how you would have heard about that. That place burnt down over 60 years back.
Now here I'm going to take out some silences. And this is where I get into the fine-tuning on the voices. I always try to fine-tune the voices before I start laying in the background noise, because while the background noise will cover up a lot of errors or thunks or whatever, it's still...
Fortune teller's shop.
Oh.
Now, actually, I'm going to go... Yeah, I'm going to start for this here.
Fortune teller's shop.
Oh. I don't know how you would have...
I'm going to take that in a little bit. I'm going to take this in a little bit. And I'm going to take this in a little bit. Again, you know, she's a theatrical actress, so...
I don't know how you would have heard about that. That place burnt down over 60 years back.
Okay.
Place...
We got a little bit of a pop on the P here. So I'm going to run another high-pass filter on it.
Place burnt down over 60 years back.
And I can't get rid of the K, but there's a glunk here too, so... It's a little bit... That's a little bit better. I mean, some of it is going to get covered up, but, you know, the sad part is, as I have mentioned before, when I was teaching Kim of Warped Space how to do this, she was kind of sad that now that she knew how things went together, she was hearing mistakes in everybody's shows.
Really?
Oh my, yes. I remember.
And there's a noise in here. Just a second, I gotta make it bigger. If I cut off the end of the S here, which I just did, I'm going to have to fade it out. You don't want it to sound cut off. Now, I have fade out set on my keyboard to be a shortcut key. And you really don't want to have it fade out and then have one little glick like that.
Yes.
And again, I'm going to take it in. And I'm actually going to shove it up closer to Alice's line.
Oh my, yes. I remember it like it was yesterday. My husband.
Ugh. It's sad because I don't actually like it scrolling constantly all the time when I'm working, but I also don't like it going off the screen. It's because that was an issue I brought up earlier, was the fact that it...
Yesterday. My husband.
I'm going to fade this in to take off the clicky
My
end.
husband. God God rest his soul, planted himself right
Now I'm going to hit the P with a high pass to get rid of that noise.
planted himself right there. Planted himself right there in the middle of the street with a big bucket of water, determined the fire would determined the fire wouldn't spread to our shop.
Sounds good now. But you can see every little difference matters. And if something sounds stilted, if you tempo it up, it'll often help it
And
sound
it
better.
never got rebuilt.
And you take in some of the blanks a little bit, you cut them down, because people don't always think about how natural they're sounding when they're talking. And as I said,
Well, someone tried about 10 years ago.
there's a clicky noise in here that I don't like. I'm probably just going to fade that out.
Tried about 10 years.
I'll blank that.
Tried about 10 years ago. They scoffed at the bad luck, but they learned.
And then there's something at the end of learn.
Tried about 10 years ago. They scoffed at the bad luck, but they learned. Learned.
And I'll blank that out.
Learned.
And learned what?
Learned what?
Now I don't want to bring this completely in. I don't want it to cut down on her line in this case, because this is a portentous end of scene line. So it's important, and we want a little bit of space for it.
That ghosts are nothing to scoff at.
And I might take that just a skosh. Okay. I have no idea where just a skosh came from, but I mean, where the phrase, but it's something that came down in my family. Okay, so now we listen to the whole thing and see how it sounds. La la la. Actually, I'm going to do one more thing before I do that. This is a voiceover, so I'm going to duplicate it. Now, this is how I do it, because I like having a lot of control. Other people, other programs have all sorts of ways of doing it, but I like to do it this way. I take the duplicate. I'm going to highlight it. I'm going to go -20. I'm going to run reverb on it, just using the default, and then I run a low pass filter. And then it sounds like this.
Nothing. Still an empty shell. Where could that crazy old woman have gotten to?
A little bit loud, so I'm going to use this gain slider while I do it. Now this is sort of like, it controls the volume of this track, basically. And so I'm going to adjust it.
Nothing. Still an empty shell. Where could that crazy old woman have gotten to?
And I forgot to take the husky part out of crazy.
Where could that crazy...
Right in this bit here. You hear that? Whoo. That's where we're going to do a high pass filter again.
Crazy old woman...
And actually, let me undo that and take it up a notch. Let's look at that real close, because see, it's this right here. Because anytime you see the waveform turn into big waves instead of tight waves, that's when you're getting a thumpy noise. And you really don't need it. So let's see how it sounds without it. I had to make sure I cut it out of both tracks, or this one wouldn't match that one anymore.
Crazy old...
That's much better. And then I can still run the high pass filter on it, because it's not going to hurt the kurr.
Crazy old woman have gotten...
So, back to the top.
Nothing. Still an empty shell. Where could that crazy old woman have gotten to?
Can I help you, miss?
I thought this used to be a fortune teller's shop.
Oh,
There's a bit of it in here, too. I was so focused.
This used to be a This used to be a...
It's right in here. Sometimes you have to go back and forth a lot before you can figure out where your noise problems are. Run a high-pass filter on it.
This used to be a fortune teller's shop.
Oh, I don't know how you would have heard about that. That place burnt down over 60 years back.
Really?
Oh my, yes. I remember it like it was yesterday. My husband, God rest his soul, planted himself right there in the middle of the street with a big...
I'm going to take that noise out. It's just a mouth noise.
There in the middle of the street with a big bucket of water, determined the fire wouldn't spread to our shop.
And it never got rebuilt.
Well, someone tried about 10 years ago. They scoffed at the bad luck, but they learned...
Learned what?
That ghosts are nothing to scoff at.
See? There. Now we've got a pretty complete scene between the two of them. And I'm going to pull this in because it's now causing issues with it rolling off. Usually when you hit the end of any active stuff on the screen, it will stop, but it regards this line as active stuff as well as what's actually recorded. So its labels are a little tricky sometimes. Okay, so now I've got the voiceover with the sound over it, and I have a tendency to, it's -10, so I'm going to just run a -10 on here. -10 amplification, and then put this back to center, because then if anything happens to this slider, it's not going to change. I've got this track set. It's something I do because I know sometimes I'll accidentally click on this and then I can't remember where it was, and then I'm fiddling around. This way, it isn't going to change unless I accidentally amplify it at some point.
Still an empty shell. Where could that crazy old woman have gotten to?
So, now the next thing, of course, to do, and we're close to running out of time, but I'm going to do this anyway, is to put in a sound effect. Put in a background noise. Now, I'm going to have to go back all the way over to my backup drive for this one. We're in Warehouse 13 for most of the work, but we're going back to Griff, and then we're going to all my effects. Alright, so I go into my effects file, and my old effects, and then I'm going to go, okay, let's see, I have ambience. And the one I want, I have certain ones I use a lot for random stuff. I've picked them up from a lot of different places, and I'm trying to get back to using certain things. I mean, using most stuff from places where I've actually purchased them. But for this one, because, let's see, street, that's what I want. It's been such a long time, it's hard to remember even. The one I want has bicycles in it. Where is it? Pedestrian, street, traffic, highway. Jesus saves. That's an actual track I purchased a license to a long time ago, and I use it a lot because I just find it bizarrely entertaining. Oh, let's see here. Traffic peds, line apartment. Okay. We'll just go with pedestrian street ambience. Okay, so I'm going to take this. Now, I could have imported it right into the track, but since I had to go through external folders to get there, I just opened it up, and then I'm going to paste it in here. Now, it's short, and let's listen to this for a bit by itself. Now, you've got a very 3D sound to this, because this was clearly recorded in 3D. Things move around through the soundscape. This isn't just a mono thing. And people walk by and all this different stuff. So it's fine. What I'm going to do, rather than just repeat it, is I'm going to take parts of it and move them through, because it really is just background sound. You don't have to worry too much about um, people noting it. The Jesus Saves one is totally different. But if you haven't heard it, I have this track of a street, and it just had this guy off in the distance going, "Jesus is knocking at the door of your heart," and uh, it was just it's. I used it in so many of my shows. I like kind of using standard tracks, like standard sound effects, rather than trying to create it every time. In some ways, because people kind of get used to it. They're like, "Oh, there's that sound effect again. That's kind of funny." Now let's see how we sound when we play the whole track.
Nothing. Still an empty shell. Where could that crazy old woman have gotten to?
Can I help you, miss?
I thought this used to be a fortune teller's shop.
Oh, I don't know how you would have heard about that. That place burnt down over 60 years back.
Really?
Oh my, yes. I remember it like it was yesterday. My husband, God rest his soul, planted himself right there in the middle of the street with a big bucket of water, determined the fire wouldn't spread to our shop.
And it never got rebuilt.
Well, someone tried about 10 years ago. They scoffed at the bad luck, but they learned
Learned what?
that ghosts are nothing to scoff at.
Now you hear how different that is, and you notice me turning down the gain over here to bring the pedestrian track down. I have heard a couple things that I want to do. I want to bring this and this up, because it sounds like the volume wobbles a little bit there. So,
Built.
Well, someone tried about 10 years ago. They scoffed at the bad luck, but they learned
Learned what?
that ghosts are nothing to scoff at.
there. And then see, taking this down, I took it down by 10. And I'm going to do that manually again. And then put the gain back. I've just had too many times when I've accidentally touched that gain slider. So I'm just, once bitten, twice shy and all that. Now I'm going to label this. This is Alice voiceover reverb. So I don't forget why it's there. And just shrink that up. I could mix it all together, but at this point I might as well just go ahead and... Another thing that I might do, and that I've done enough times, is actually take that out of her regular track. Because that way I can make the voiceover in a different place in the soundscape than the voice. So say I make this 10% left instead. Or actually, let's go 50% instead. Let's pull it way over to the side. No. New systems, new mice. So then we go like this.
Nothing. Still an empty shell. Where could that crazy old woman have gotten to?
Can I help you, miss?
I thought this used to be a fortune teller's shop.
Oh, I don't know how you would have heard about that.
I'm going to volume this up a little bit. Let's go.
Can I help you, miss?
Yeah.
I
And so that way it sets that the voiceover voice a little bit separate from her physical voice, so it makes it even clearer that it's a voiceover voice. Voiceovers are super common in anime type stories where you have you're hearing the inner thoughts of the characters, and it's usually not so much for narration as for getting across what they're feeling and what they're doing. Sometimes like this one, obviously we need a little refresher, but a lot of times it's what they're thinking about, their feelings, or about other characters or something, or just and so it's not, I don't consider it the same as cheesy narration. exactly, because it's a cliche of the genre. It's just like when I do B&B Investigates or any other sort of detective stories, having a voiceover for that is a cliche of the genre. You get, you always have Sam Spade doing his narration and telling you about whatever. So in this case, this scene is effectively done because there isn't really any sound effects between these two. I could put some footsteps in under Alice or something as she's walking down the street, but really it's unnecessary. And there's no reason to cloud up a soundscape with anything you don't need there. Um, the reason, I mean, this scene stands alone as it is, and so it's effectively done, and I'm pretty happy with it. So I'm just going to leave it until I get back to it in the grand scheme of things. I'm working through scenes sort of randomly selected, mainly chosen because of which ones have all their voices. And so that's exciting. And so this is going to be the end of this. I was going to talk about writing, but I didn't get around to it because I was having so much fun with this scene. So hopefully that's going to be of interest, and I will see you tomorrow. We'll see, today's Wednesday, right? Tomorrow will be Thursday, and I will be back, and I'm just gonna keep doing this ad infinitum. Have a good day.